Jeff Canada, thank you so much for being here with us today. It means everything to us that you made time on a Saturday.
Well, first of all, thank you, Sadiqa. So I have to start off here. Originally, this was scheduled for last Saturday, and I agreed to do it. But last Saturday, I was taking my whole family to the Bahamas. So I was going to get up that morning while they were all doing whatever they do in the Bahamas and give this talk. And I was scared to tell my wife because I married this Black woman from Harlem, and she's like, no, we go on vacation, you not working. So I didn't tell her, and then you moved the meeting. So when I was coming to talk with you today, I told my wife, Yvonne, I was like, you know, this thing was scheduled for last Saturday. She gave me a look. I just said, I am so glad y'all moved this meeting. So I'm a happily married man. I want to stay married. So excited to be with you. I want to say something right off the bat. I've been in this business 45 years. I started working with the most disadvantaged kids in Boston. During my career, I have been through some educational challenges that have really been significant. I went through the desegregation issues in Boston. I went through the crack epidemic in New York. I went through the criminal justice reform errors. I went through when they were calling our kids super predators, and they were building jails based on third and fourth grade reading scores. I was fighting in Harlem for our children throughout all of that. Because of what's been happening with COVID and schools and remote learning and absenteeism and all of the challenges, this is the worst crisis that I have faced in my educational career. So that's why on vacation, not on vacation, when I heard Sadiqa was pulling together the folks in Louisville who were prepared to take responsibility for the lives of the children there, I said, this is so urgent, it can't wait another weekend, another week. This is what you do in the midst of an emergency. So I was happy when I tuned in. Y'all let me in. Y'all talking about $50 million. I said, okay. Y'all seem like y'all was serious about this thing, that these kids are guaranteed college. I'm like, all right, this would have been worth it even on my vacation, because at this stage in my career, the most important thing for me is that our children, children who have, I think, been disinvested in throughout my entire career, that we have an opportunity to try to create the strategies to begin to remedy these issues. And if we don't do it, it's going to be our fault. So that's how I feel. I'm at a stage now where I'm looking at the end of my career, but I cannot leave this business with things being worse for our children than when I started. And that's kind of what we're facing right now. So this is the moment. And you know what? Everybody's not up to this task. Sadiqa promised me that you all were. So I'm just saying, if I come to Louisville 3 years from now and things are not going well, I know who to blame. So that I just want to put that right up front. What's the challenge? You know, it was mentioned Waiting for Superman. That was named after when we were doing the documentary. The film was done, and for about 6 months it didn't have a name. And I kept calling the producers, hey, what are we going to call the film? When's it coming out? One day they called me and they said, Jeff, we know what we're going to call the film. I said, what? They said, we're going to call it Waiting for Superman. And I was stunned because that was something I said in the film, explaining what life was like growing up in the South Bronx. So the South Bronx was the kind of place that everybody who could afford to get out, they got out. The drugs, the crime, the lousy schools, you knew you were at the end of the line when you were trapped in the South Bronx. And the story I told was when my mother told me there was no Superman, because I was a big comic book reader. And for all of you younger people, there were no Marvel comics at that, no Spider-Man. It was all Superman, Superwoman, Batman. When my mother told me there is no Superman, I began to cry. And she thought I was crying because there's no Easter Bunny, right? You know, kids have these things. But I was crying because I realized body with enough power to save us. And we weren't going to make it. We weren't going to get out of that place. People say, okay, but Jeff, yeah, but you got out. I mean, look, yeah, but there I had 3 brothers. Only 2 of my other brothers made it out alive. My wife, who grew up in Harlem, had 2 brothers and a sister. None of them reached 35. She's the only one left in her family. I know what it means to grow up in poverty, what it means to grow up where the deck is stacked against you, what it means to grow up where your schools don't afford you a way to provide for yourself, a place where young people think, I've got no future, so I might as well take my shot. If that means hustling, I'll hustle because I gotta live now. I'm not sure about tomorrow. What we are dealing with and doing this work is literally changing the odds for our children in our communities. And I see this as almost like a sacred act. Those of us who have the resources, the talent, the skill set to come in and make a difference, we've got to make that difference. Because I'm going to tell you this. I told people all over this country, there's no superheroes except the ones on this screen. That is it. There's no one coming to the rescue. They haven't come to the rescue, and they won't come to the rescue for your kids in Louisville. I realized that for my kids in the Central Harlem community. When we decided to create the zone, it's because I kept trying to figure out what one thing we could do that would be so powerful. It would propel our kids and allow them to get a set of skills that would bring them into the middle class. And I thought working in early childhood, right? Okay, 0 to 3 years. I thought maybe teen pregnancy prevention. Then I went to gang intimate. This is what I found. All of these things worked for a little while, but none of them were powerful enough to actually create what I would call the escape velocity of Harlem. And this is now my own physics. I believe that communities have gravity, and children are pulled towards the norms of that community. And if those gravitational norms, kids get pregnant early, kids begin to sell drugs, if that is the gravity pulling on children, doing something for a year or 2 will not give those kids the escape velocity to avoid gravity. And what I found was, if I left my kids at 7, by 9, they were back in trouble. If I left them by 9, they were in trouble by 11. If I left them by 13, they were in trouble by 15. When I sent my kids off to college, they weren't graduating with degrees and accumulating a lot of debt. We ended up creating the Harlem Children's Zone, not because we were, we had the money, we had the resources. We created it because everything else we tried failed. We could get a couple of kids there, 20 kids, 40 kids. But in our community of 10,000 kids, we were just failing. The numbers were just obvious. The more we collected the data, the clearer it became to us that what we were doing was not successful. So we said, what does it take? Now, I don't know about your boards, but I have a very business-like board. And they said, okay, Jeff, you have this new idea, great. What's it going to cost? And when they saw the cost, they said, I don't know that we can afford to do that. And this is what I found out about rich people and poor kids. Rich people never think about what it costs to save their own kids, but they are obsessed over what it costs to save poor kids. And if you get caught up in what you can't afford to do, you are going to not create programs and strategies powerful enough to actually lift your kids out of the circumstances they are in and get them into the places where they can be successful. And for the longest period of time, this stymied us. And I would love to tell you, I figured this whole thing out, and I thought about the zone and whatever, but I'm gonna tell you the truth about how this happened. You're gonna think less of me when you hear how this really went down. So when I was thinking about the zone, there was a foundation person, I won't say who the person is, who was also thinking about working in place. And so she came to me, she said, hey, I'm thinking about working in place. I said, wow, so am I. She said, oh, we should work together. And I'm thinking, because I have to raise money. I'm thinking, ooh, sounds like I'm gonna get a grant out of this. I wonder how much she's gonna give me. I said, well, she seemed pretty excited. I'm gonna write a $400,000 proposal. So I turned in a $400,000 proposal, and she said, Jeff, really? You're gonna save the kids in Harlem for this? Now, in my brain, I'm thinking, oh, wait a second, it's not $400,000. This might be $1 million proposal. So I said, no, give me that back, give me that back. No, I'm gonna write what I think it would take. So I wrote the $1 million proposal. She got this true story. She got the $1 million proposal, and she said, really? What you want to do, this is what it's going to cost? Now, what's in the back of my head? Wow, this might be a $5 million proposal. So I think, give me back. I wrote the $5 million proposal. This is what she said to me. Will you guarantee me, if you get this money, that you are going to get your kids in Harlem, who have been failing for 50 years on every social and health and behavioral indice we care about, that you're going to get those kids so they can be successful and graduate college? I said, guarantee? Guarantee? No, I can't guarantee. She said, I want the proposal that guarantees that. I said, oh my goodness, I hit the mother load. I said, okay, get it. I wrote the $50 million proposal. So I turned it in. She says, okay, Jeff, you guarantee? I said, oh, no, I'm guaranteed. This here, if I do this, if I start with these kids at birth and stay with them I guarantee you, I'm gonna get those kids in. She said, that's great. I only have one question for you. I said, what's the question? Where are you gonna get the money? I said, what do you mean where am I gonna get the money? I thought you were gonna give me the money. She said, I don't have that kind of money. This is true. Now, let me tell you what happened to me. For the first time in my professional career, I told the truth about what I thought it took to save Black and brown kids, for real. Kids who were growing up in the hood, who had all the challenges, lots of them only one parent, a lot of them with their grandparents, surrounded by crime and drugs, in schools that have failed them for 50. This, to save those kids, this is what it would take. And everything else I had done in my professional career was not saving kids. It was saving a few kids, but it was not the plan. Once I wrote that plan back, there was no going back to pretending what I was doing was going to save our kids. Then I had only one option. I had to figure out how to raise the money. And I spent the next 5 years figuring out how to raise that money. Part of what I'm hoping you all will avoid is we think this is the strategy because this is the money we've raised, versus we think this is the strategy. Now, how do we raise the money to make sure that strategy is successful? And where I have seen our efforts fail is that folks have given up before they've even tried. They've just decided we could never do that. And so let's do the best we can. And in our communities, people have been doing the best they can and not what's actually needed if we're going to help these children be successful. So that's one message. I just want to give that message. I didn't know where the money was coming from and where it was going to come from. But I'll tell you, I learned something from Marion Wright Edelman. When Marion, who runs the Children's Defense Fund, I think the foremost children's advocate probably in the world, in my opinion, love Marion. We were working on a Black community crusade together. And she was going to buy the Alex Haley farm, and it's in Knoxville, Tennessee, which she ended up buying. But she told me she was going to buy it, but I knew I was on the board and I was her board chair. We didn't have money for it. And she said, Jeff, I'm going in to sign the contract and I'm going to leave the rest up to God. And I was like, now that's some serious faith there. You know what? She got the money. She did the farm. I don't know where people are. I'm not going to, suggest to anyone that they have to believe one thing or another. I'm just saying, for me, I believe there was no alternative than to figure out how to do this. And I sat on that path. I wrote that proposal. I wrote that business plan. I sat on that path to save my kids. Now, I would like to tell you that just having a plan is enough. And clearly it is not. There are reasons the communities that have failed for decades are failing. And some of those reasons are institutional, are historic, are, I think, systemic. And how we began to approach this work from every level is absolutely critical. And some of us have to be prepared to do different things. The most important thing that I thought I heard was our goal has to be to get out. Whether how explicit that goal is, see, we were explicit at the Harlem Children's Zone. And I'm gonna tell you, a bunch of people attacked me for that. You're an elitist. You're putting down people who work, all of the skilled work, all of the union workers, all of that stuff. This is, I'm sure you will face that. You have employers right now who need folks. They don't need necessarily college education. They need to be able to have a set of work skills, soft skills, hard skills to be able to do the labor. But this is what I've said to my critics about this. I get paid to work with other people's children. I'm going to have the same expectation for those children that I have for my own children. My wife and I had only one expectation for our children. It was for them to go to college. That was our expectation. Now, we have 4 kids. 3 of them went to college, 1 didn't. By the way, I just have to say this to you all, because my kids are all grown. If you got 4 kids, 1 of them ain't gonna do the right thing. I'm just saying, don't go soul searching. What did we do wrong? All of that. I'm just saying it seems to be one of those principles, but we had the same expectation for all of our children. When they got to a point that they could make their own decision, 3 made the decision of going to college, 1 made the decision not. He's doing great. He's having a good career and everything else. That wasn't our choice. We didn't make that choice when they were 12. We didn't make that choice when they were 15. All of my kids in the Harlem Children's Zone, let me tell you what we were trying to do. When we started this work 20 years ago, you stopped a kid in Harlem on the street, just random, and you said, hey, you know anybody going to college? You know what they would say? Boy, I think there's this girl over on 117th Street. I think she's going to college. And if you said, well, you go to college, you know, you have to be a genius. No one from Harlem goes to college. That's what we faced. We have, in that 20-year period of time, we have right now close to 1,000 kids in college. We have more than 1,000 kids who have graduated with college degrees. When my youngest son visited my program, and he saw in our schools, in the mornings, all of our kids line up in the hallway and they say their creed. And how does the end of their creed goes like this: we will go to college, we will succeed. This is our promise, this is our creed. Now you have to realize what he's seeing. Hundreds of kids. I mean, he says, Dad, you're brainwashing these kids. I said, that you're 100% right. That's exactly what I'm doing. You come to Harlem today. You come in my zone. You ask anybody if they know kids in college. They will tell you all the kids we know are in college. Everywhere you go, you see kids in college. And if you ask, are you going to college? Absolutely. That's what you do when you live in Harlem. You go to college because that is what we have been trained to do since we were infants. Changing the normative behavior of our communities and our young people. That's what the Harlem Children's Zone is about, where kids value studying hard, getting good grades, being productive, giving back to their communities, working for a living. We want that to be the set of normative values in our community. We want the kid who says, I'm not going to college, to be the exception. To that kid is not doing what the gravity said. And there's always going to be some kids who push and pull you in different ways. So this effort we're making is to transform what it means to grow up in neighborhoods where young people have failed. Now, there are a couple of things I want to say about that. Everybody who wants to do this work is not equally able to do it. And there has to be accountability. And this is where, and I'm saying this around the country, a lot of heads are shaking, but they're all thinking about somebody else. And when I meet with a group of folks, about 20% of them can't do the job and they can't stay, they're thinking, yeah, you guys are part of that 20, not me. The way you don't have to deal with that is when you don't deal with outcomes. Because look, this work, we've been at this work for 20 years. This work is not going to be accomplished overnight. If you're going to do this, you really need to be prepared to invest 10 years just to get the first set of really hard results. But there are lots of indicators. So people would say, third grade reading score is important. I say, yep, they're important. But I know what happens if you don't deal with those kids in middle school. It don't matter. So it's an indicator. It's not the result I'm looking for. 7th grade, yeah, it's important. You get promoted. Kids who don't get promoted, we know what. But that's not the result. Learning algebra, you're great because it's hard to go to college if you don't know algebra. Important, not the result. You know what that result is? When you walk across that stage with your child. Everything else is an indicator saying we have kids going in the right direction. And we have to hold ourselves accountable to the indicators, but I don't want to pretend the indicators are the results, right? Like, oh yeah, look at our 3rd grade reading scores. Aren't we wonderful? Yeah, that just means we got our kids probably average. And if everything else goes good, maybe with all the right help through middle and high school, these kids will get into college and then we have to help them get through. That's what that means to me. But if you're not prepared to look at those 3rd grade reading scores, promotion rates, attendance, and hold yourself accountable when they are subpar, which they are, by definition. Every place I go and help people, the results are subpar. Otherwise, they don't need me. No reason for me to come in and talk to you. Your kids are doing great. Let somebody else talk to your kids. I'm here for kids that are failing and communities and schools that are failing. Those are my kids that I care about. And those kids, the data is bad. And it takes a lot to turn that data around. It's not going to be turned around overnight. And I tell folks, don't be out there promising you're going to eliminate the achievement gap in 2 years. That's not realistic. That's just setting everybody up for failure. What I say is improve those scores by 10%. Yeah, so if they're terrible, if they're at 29%, I want to try and improve them by 10%. Yeah, but Jeff, they're still terrible. Yeah, but it's 10% better than they were. Then the next year, I want another 10%. And next year, I want another 10%. I want something that's realistic, because this is what I said to people, and I'm sure you all will go through it. 15 years ago, I had this plan, and I have, if you come to my office, you'll see I have all my charts, I have all my blocks, I have all my kids in college, and what college is there. It's all on a set of charts. So I bring a foundation person in, I got 47 kids in college. And they're like, really? You have 47 kids in college, they're saying this is the end result? I said, yeah, but we're early in the process. You come next year, I'm gonna have 60. Now you come in, you see the 980 kids in college. When it was 47, I didn't pretend it was something it wasn't. It was the beginning. It was gonna grow every year. And what I said was, here's how we're gonna grow this number over time. So when you come 10 years from now, this is what you're gonna see. Part of this is setting realistic expectations, but then holding yourself accountable for. One of the things that's happened in our communities, and you say, Geoffrey, you don't know Louisville. I just know what's happened to all of our communities, every place in America. I don't care if it's men. Failure has been accepted as the norm. Schools, my school I went to in the South Bronx, that I'm 49, that I went to that school 45 years ago. I started those schools. Those schools were lousy and failing more kids than any place else in New York City. You fast forward another 45 years, they're failing more kids than any other place in New York City. And I tell people, a lousy school is not like a bottle of wine. You say, oh yeah, but 67 was a good year. They have failed these kids every single year. Guess what's happening this year? You think they're gonna do anything different this year? You think there's some crisis? You think someone say, oh my God. Now look, y'all may not know the size of the South Bronx. I'm not talking about 10,000 kids. I'm talking about 50, 60,000 kids every year being failed in one community that's been happening for 45 years and will happen next year. No one loses a job. Nothing changes. I should have warned you, I'll start yelling at y'all pretty soon, because I get kind of wound up about this, because the reality is so stark to me. Failure is accepted. So when I started my schools in Harlem, which had the similar failing all the time, when I started my schools, I said to the mayor who was there, my board in my community, if I don't have a better school, in 5 years, I'm gonna create a better school than all these schools that have been around for 50 years. And if I don't do that, I'm gonna fire myself. You know what they said? Oh my goodness, they wrote it down. Just said 5 years from this date, if he doesn't do this, he fire himself. They were like, that guy's bold. So they left. I brought my team in. I said, Joe, hear what I said? They were like, wow, Jeff, that was bold. You said you're gonna fire yourself in 5 years. I said, yeah, I did, but I just want y'all to know, I'm gonna be the last one going. All y'all gonna be gone before me. I'm just telling you, we're in this thing together. It ain't gonna be Jeff leaving. It's gonna be all of us out of here, because I'm not gonna take money to fail kids. Not gonna do it. And you know what? They knew I wasn't joking, and I wasn't joking. This work, you know how I feel about these kids and what's happened to them. This is not easy stuff. and it's not for everybody. And if you accept excuses, people always come up to me, I give a talk, oh, Jeff, that was so inspirational, I want to work for you. I said, you don't want to work for me. You don't really want to work for me, because I don't want to hear no excuse. I hire you, I say, you know, 6 months, you're like, Jeff, these kids, I don't know what's going on. Their parents don't want to help me. Their brother's in a gang. This guy. You knew that when you took the job. That was the job. It's not an accident we're here. We did this on purpose. We meant to go in the toughest place in our community to save our kids. So I don't want to hear an excuse. If you can't fix those kids, you got to find another job. So that's my perspective on the work. It's hard. It's difficult. You got to hold yourself accountable. You don't set unrealistic expectations. You have to have a design that actually will work. You know, schools are designed for failure. So I got in trouble with the unions and other people because I would say stuff like, if your school is failing, how come everybody gets to go home in the summertime and get 8 weeks off? And they were like, oh, he don't like unions. No, it's got nothing to do with unions. I'm just saying, if something is not working, how? I said, look, the fires are going on in California in the middle of the hottest time, right? It's burning up everything. The firemen can't say, hey, guess what? It's summer, we're taking off. We'll come back in September. You'd be crazy. How could you do that? You want to let, with our kids? Oh yeah, you can walk away. I say, well, look, let's extend the school day. Let's work with folks and get, what, you want folks to work more hours? Is that the only alternative versus kids failing? So when I say things are designed, some things are designed for failure and there's no pressure to change them. Our zone, we're operating basically, we close about 4 weeks out the year. Last week in June, first week in July, last week in August, first week until Labor Day starts. Other than that, we're running programs and kids are getting an education. They're doing all kinds of other stuff that's important. And I don't want to focus on the hard academics as if I don't believe in all the other stuff. We have the best arts programs. We have the best sports programs. We have all the creative arts, whether it's painting or drama. We think kids need all of the good stuff. So yes, we've got a lot of young people who are doing academic work, but they are also traveling as dance groups around the country. Took them over to Africa. We're trying to give these young people a set of experiences so that this will remain with them for the rest of their lives. And for our high school kids, we try and make sure all of them have a way to earn some money. They all have, they're not. They have to do all kinds of work so they can earn money because kids need money. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, you know what poor people really need? They need money. Because if they had money, they wouldn't be poor, right? So poor kids need money. They do. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I know people want to make it more complicated and all the rest of this stuff, but that's essentially the issue. If I don't have enough money to get a haircut and I'm 15, that means I'm not dating, I'm not going out, I'm gonna find some money to get a haircut. Now, people think these kids need a whole bunch of money. They don't need a whole bunch of money. They just need enough so they can take care of basic things. So yeah, my kids work. We're the biggest youth employer in Harlem. And yeah, I raised the money for that too. Because you know why? Because my own kids worked. And my own kids had an allowance. And my own kids had a way so they could get their hair cut and they could save up their money and get a pair of sneakers and do all that other stuff. Yeah, that's what my kids have. So I want my other kid. I have to tell you this. I don't say this stuff out loud to everybody. But not everybody wants to pay to have our kids be treated like their kids. A lot of people try to figure out what's the minimum you could give poor kids. And if it looks like you're doing more than that, they may not want to fund you. So some things I wrap up in budgets, and people haven't quite pulled out where some of that stuff is going, because I got to do this stuff because I'm going to be honest with you. So we're probably all middle class people. Any of us who've had a child and raised them, it was not easy. It wasn't always successful. Even if you have education and money and help, it is not easy. It is very hard. And if you have none of that, it is almost impossible. And so we're thinking about how we support families, how we help our families so that they're not so destitute. There's no way for them to keep their own health, both mental, spiritual, physical health. We're trying to make sure our families can come into our programs and use the exercise equipment and other stuff so that they can keep themselves healthy in ways that are important. So I know I've been going on, and I'm going, because I want to do some question and answers with everybody. But the one thing that I want to say is, we start with kids from birth, and we start with something we call baby college. And it's about the parents. It's really not about the kids. It's just teaching parents all of the science that has come out about brain development since I had my first kids. End up with the brain creating all of these additional synapses. And over time, they reduce as the brain becomes more efficient, and it realizes I don't need 8 ways, I can do it with 2 ways. And what happens when you give negative stimulation, when you're yelling and cursing or using drugs or doing nothing with that child but placing them in front of a TV. We know that science now. And if you don't have a good start, it makes it so much harder. It really does. It makes it so much harder. So we start with kids at birth, and we stay with them, like I said, until they graduate high school. Now, this is what I'm hoping you all will experience, because every year we have graduation. I go to graduation. I'm not the CEO anymore. I'm still president. I'm still chairman of the board of our schools. And this year graduation, it happens every year now. Parent comes up, they want to take pictures. It's COVID, so everybody has masks. You have to be a little distant. And they say, Mr. Canada, there she is. You remember her from baby college? Like, yeah, do I remember her from when she was 2? And I always say, oh, yes, now I recognize her. No, I don't have a clue who this kid is. But they have been with us since they've been infants. And this is what we said to our parents. We will not leave you. We will support you through your toughest times. When that 14-year-old is running away from home and lost their mind, we're going to be there, helping you get them back on the right track. And sooner or later, you will be standing here at graduation with 100% of our kids with college acceptances. That's the commitment we made to them. And 20 years later, our parents come up and say, yep, you told me that. I believed it. I stayed with you for this whole period of time. In our schools, we've completely eliminated the achievement gap. We have state tests, Common Core. Our reading and math scores for our kids in Harlem are above what they are for whites in New York State. That's great, but that's just from 4th grade to 8th grade. Anyone thinks after that is a layup, they're mistaken. You still got to get these kids through high school, into college, and through college. That's what this work is about. COVID has made it much more important and much more difficult, right? It's going to be more difficult. And we've got to deal with the trauma. We've all been traumatized. We all have. And there's more trauma coming. I don't suspect this year is going to be that much better than last year because of the low uptake of vaccination. So we've got our work cut out for us. And the thing that excites me, and top of this, you all are committed to this. You all have a vision for this work. And I think from just the little part that I've heard. People are committed to being held accountable to save our children. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm sorry about the yelling. It's Saturday morning, but I get, I just get charged up when I see folks who are serious about this work, because I feel like, when Sojourner Truth, when Frederick Douglass, when folks were fighting, not knowing what the end story would be, when Rosa Parks and Malcolm and Martin, when they were fighting, not knowing how the story would turn out, they were fighting for this moment right now. They were fighting so when things got really tough, there would be enough of us with educations and resources and access that we could push back, that we could fight back, and we could continue the march forward. And I just feel at my age, I feel that pull of history. I feel that our ancestors were counting on us right now to step up. And everybody's not going to step up. I'm just going to tell you that. But if enough of us step up, we can get this job done. Okay, I'm stopping now for real. I really am stopping. I'm happy to take questions from everybody.
Woo! That was good, 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 good. Let me tell you, first of all, I appreciate you being here so that they know people from the South Bronx just yell. It's not just me. We're just yellers. It's just a problem that we have, and we love it. And as Christina said in the chat, this is something to yell about. And you have to have passion, right, Rhonda? So questions, anybody, go, please. This was great stuff. Thank you so much for being here with us. And we're coming to you soon.
I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Can I just real quick, Mr. Canada? Yeah, I just have a question. I love what you say about, you're going to figure out what the problem is and then what it takes to get it done and then just move. And so I face that same things where like my ideas were big and crazy. Yeah. And I have this professional board that says, how we can't do that. What advice would you give? I mean, and I love the fact that you said I trust God for it all, because I tell people they probably get sick of me saying that I trust God for it all. But technically, how did you get past those? Because you don't want to do things behind people's backs, right? You got a board of directors. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be real. You don't want to do that. Yeah. So what advice would you give to make that work?
So here, and that's a great question, brother. Thanks for the question. Practical and for lots of folks maybe on this Zoom call. I fired my board. I'm being serious. I found a person, Stan Druckenmiller, whose vision was as big as mine. And I got him on my board. And then I asked him if he would chair the board. So that's always complicated, the old board chair and all the rest of this stuff. But he had so much money and power that, like they do with most people who have money and power, they were kind of just like, well, if that's what he wants to do. When Stan got there, he and I came in with a plan. So I'll tell you how this happens. I don't want to make it seem simplistic. We brought in some outside think tank, I'm going to say this, but not in a way, white folks from finance to talk about a fundraising campaign. They wouldn't have listened. My board was all white. They weren't going to listen to a brother or sister giving this. And they laid out a vision of what it would take. And they said, and each one of you on the board are going to have to contribute somewhere between $250,000 to $500,000 to bring this vision. I saw them board members looking at one another, and they were like, so when I came to talk to them, they were like, Jeff, I don't know if this is the right board for me to be on. And because Stan said, put that money up right away. He says, okay, I'm in. As it wasn't quite that simple, but it was that simple. A big vision that called for the board to step up. And the board voted on the vision. And then I brought in the person that says, this is how we're going to execute that. So we brought on board members who all could meet that commitment. And that happened over the course of 2 years. Now, okay, that's not practical for everybody. But what I think you do have to find someone, either in the finance or business community, who is not afraid of big ideas. Because my idea was too big for my board. They were sitting there and saying, we love Jeff, but really, where's he taking this thing? They stopped, they would have stopped it right there. There would have been no zone. It just wouldn't have happened, right? So that to me, and I think that's an area, here's the other thing that I'm going to say about this day. No one had done it. So the fact that we were going to go out and do something this big, people are like, well, who could do that? Now people are doing these efforts around the country, right? And when I take people out to Minneapolis and they meet Sandra Samuels, that sister is running her zone in the north end of Minneapolis, and she's taking care of business, right? I can bring folks now and say, so when I went to Minneapolis to help her raise money, I said to her community, my business community back want to come here and get jobs, and so you need to help her. And Stan came in and said, yeah, and I'm helping Jeff. That's what we have to do. So, and when he said the numbers, I could see folks in that business community, they all started whispering, what did he say? Was that the real number? Was there extra zero on there? They had never heard of it before, right? If you're used to giving somebody $2,000 and you think that's a big deal, right? And somebody comes in and said, that $2,000 ain't nothing. If you ain't coming up with six figures, you ain't doing nothing. That's what Stan was saying to them. And they was all like, really? And here's the issue that I tried to get folks to understand. None of them are any poorer when they reach that limit. It's not like in doing that, suddenly they can't send their kids to college, or that third house they have, they can't pay the mortgage. It's just that in their minds, they never thought you could give that kind of money to poor Black and brown kids. So trying to get that message is not something maybe, you know, you all need to do for yourself. Maybe sometimes it's better to have outsiders come in, right? To kind of stir that pot up a little bit and let folks think about, y'all need to come deal with this. Because when the Obama administration asked us about promised neighborhoods and what it would take, Angela Blackwell, if you don't know Angela Blackwell, she's one of the most brilliant thinkers. She created Policy Link and other things. That sister is just like, to me, just brilliant. We told them, you need to think about $50 million, right? You need to really, this is not nickel dime stuff. This is not gonna work on a shoestring. You gotta be able to do those kind of investments in poor communities for real. And those numbers were unheard of, right? For folks thinking about our communities. So we're trying to change that dynamic. That's part of the reason I created the William Julius Wilson Institute, is to go out and say to folks, you've got to make these kinds of investments, and you can't get it done for nickels and dimes. It's going to take real dollars to get, and sustained over time. This is not a 2 or 3 year operation if it's going to be successful. We've got to change the thinking of how folks feel about this work, and that's a process.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, I had the pleasure, we participate with the Harvard By All Means effort, and you spoke there, their last workshop or what have you. And I don't know if this is so much a question, but it just really resonated with me. You made the comment, especially now with these federal funds and others coming into communities, the cavalry is coming. But you also really outlined, which I think all communities suffer with a bit, is that we only have them for 3 years. We only have them for 4 years, but you really challenged the group to be bold in your thinking around all of that. And that if you do have success, and you will have success, other money will come. So I just, that really resonated. It was something I'd love to have you talk to my board about, and others in this community. And you may speak about that a little bit more, but it really resonated.
Thank you for reminding me, because I shouldn't have left that out. So President Biden, I totally swept this man. He has come out with the boldest, most aggressive strategies in my lifetime. $130 billion for education. All of our cities are going to get more money than they know what to do with. And this is what I'm afraid. This is exactly what Marilyn said. This is what I'm afraid. In Newark, they said, no, we're not going, we're going to spend that money on facilities because the money's going to disappear. So I'm saying, okay, Newark, one of the worst outcomes for students in the country. And instead of taking this money and investing it in additional tutoring and smaller classes and running schools on Saturdays and Sundays for 3 years, they're gonna say, nah, let's not do any of that stuff. Let's improve the air conditioning and yeah, we need to improve that. But do you think that's going to have one additional kid go to college over those 3 years? This is the lack of imagination that's impacting our communities. And I'm really worried about that. Yes, everybody's worried about the cliff, but you know what I've said to people? Look, for 3 years, if it means that for those 3 years, we can get an additional 5,000 kids on the right path, let the cliff happen. We'll deal with that as we have to, and we'll fight for the kids. Don't say because of the cliff, I'm not going to give these kids individual tutoring. I'm not going to make sure they have the counseling services they need. I'm not going to make sure they have an extended summer program because I'm worried about the cliff in some years going forward. That's a recipe for absolute disaster in our communities. So part of that is a policy for these plans. All have to have community sign off on them. And people should be demanding to see the strategy that's going to improve the outcomes in the poorest schools in our communities.
Other questions? I like that. People should be demanding to see the strategies that are going to improve the poorest performing schools in our communities. Is that right?
That's exactly right. They have to have written strategies. And the best performing schools will have the best plans. The worst performing schools will have the worst plans, almost by definition. And if no one's going into those schools saying, let me see that plan, who developed that plan, how did that plan really address the learning loss, the accelerated needs of our students, how we're going to attract students to get back into school, how we're going to deal with their emotional trauma, right? If it doesn't address those things specifically with dollars, we're investing an extra $2 million to deal with the learning loss. We're going to put, if you can't track, now, just because the dollars are there doesn't mean they have the right program. But if the dollars aren't even there, you know there's no program at all. Now, once you get the dollars, then you have to see what's the program that supports those dollars. Then you have to make sure. So you all are managers. I'm going to tell you what I tell my managers. The toughest part of being a manager, I haven't been a CEO for many, many years. People think it's, oh, Jeff is up there with these brilliant ideas. No, the toughest part is getting people to do what they already agreed they would do, but for reasons that I don't know, they're not doing. Now, I don't know why that's the case, right? But people will tell you they're going to do something and then they don't do it. They say we're going to offer this 4 times a week, and then they don't offer it 4 times a week. They offer it twice a week. Well, twice a week is not going to fix the situation. Do what you said you're going to do. You said we're going to hire people with these kind of credentials. You don't hire people with those kind of credentials. You hire people who don't have the credentials to get the work done. I will guarantee you, if folks aren't sitting on top of these places looking at this, you're going to have failure, not because sometimes there's not the right plan, but because there's not the right execution. And the excuses abound. So part of it is, I am telling you, this is not about resources anymore in K-12. It's not. More money than we've ever seen before. But it is about how we execute on that. And my fear is that we're not going to put together really strong plans and have really strong follow through with really strong execution. Therefore, that money is not going to produce the results that we need in the poorest community.
I'm gonna jump in again because I don't know about anybody else, but I don't know that I'm gonna be in front of Mr. Canada a whole lot.
Ben Johnson. After
Right.
you, Dave, then Ben, I think.
Okay, all right, cool, thanks.
Go ahead, Dave, and then Ben. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was Ben first. So you may have answered this question already, but when putting together a plan as big as what, you talk about a $50 million plan, I mean, you're putting together a plan that's really going to solve a problem and have sustainability. What is one of the things that you think is most often for, if you will, help to ensure the success of that plan?
So again, a great question, because I should have, you're reminding me of all the things I should have mentioned. We had the basic structure of a plan, but we actually worked with Bridgespan. I don't know if you all know who they are. It's kind of like a consultant firm to help us with the plan. This is why it was important to work with Bridgespan. So now we're a relatively small organization. So let's say our budget's about $6 million. We're going to grow that budget to $50 million. I know you say that's small. We're going to grow that budget to $50 million in 9 years, which is like really serious growth. And the most growth that happens after year 6 is in the cost of living adjustments, because we're hiring so many additional staff. So by year 7, I got $7 million worth of cost that don't buy me anything. It's just giving people raises. Now, remember, my budget's only $6 million now, and you're going to tell me I'm going to be just giving $7 million. I told Bridgespan, nah, take that out, take that out. Ain't nobody going to fund that. They said, if we do that, Geoffrey, we're going to fail. Because you're going to end up with a budget crisis if you don't play this thing out all the way. And I just thought I couldn't raise the money for it. So I was just like, well, can we tone those numbers down? They were like, nope, the numbers are the numbers. And it forced me to deal with the reality of what it means to scale for real. And if so much of scaling happens because you don't anticipate the escalating cost, right? You think of what it costs to do it today, but you're not thinking in 5 years, this is going to be the escalating cost. So I keep thinking I can raise the same amount of money, but you can't. You have to be raising that money plus X to be able to be successful. So many times we don't do that. Then we become resource starved, right? Then we can't really get the right people in because we don't have the money. Then we're trying to figure out, well, who can we get for this money? Even that kind of planning, Dave, is absolutely critical. I needed help thinking that through because there was some ugly truths there that's just business stuff that I didn't want to deal with. I had the program stuff. I knew the people I needed, but I didn't want to really deal with the cost. Let me tell you that the other major cost challenge we had. To scale, you're going to need to bring on people who have a different set of management skills than the people who are running your programs, right? And here's the downside. Those people actually cost more money than the people who are running your programs. So the people who helped me build the Harlem Children's Zone, I was going to have to bring in people who are going to make more money than those people who. I just found that hard to deal with. I was just like, no, I rebelled. But they said, Jeff, if you don't hire talent, this thing ain't going to work. And talent costs money. But I said, but the talent is so much more. They said, you got one or two choices. Be real and deal with it internally with politics, or risk that your program is never going to work. These kinds of decisions, I mean, obviously, I made the decision to hire the talent, to change the organization, to scale from serving 500 kids to serving 10,000 kids. Those are the kinds of issues that I had to deal with. And if I didn't have an outside person pushing on me, forcing me to confront this stuff, I would have papered over and it would have come out to bite me in the rear end later on.
Ben, you have a question or comment?
Question. Thanks, Mr. Canada. What can you help us with? Me, I work for government. What kind of successful strategies have you seen for government engagement? Because this is the kind of stuff we absolutely need to be involved in, but it's a totally different way of thinking for a lot of people, particularly who control budgets.
Yep. Oh boy, a great question. And I will tell you what I have always been afraid Folks hear about this comprehensive plan and they say, hey, we need to put together a children's cabinet of folks and, and they're gonna bring somebody in there. And I said to the governor of New York, and I said to other governors, unless you personally, as the chief executive, lean in, you think everybody's gonna come together and play nice in the sandbox, it never happens. Everybody protects their own turf. No one wants to give up anything. Everybody thinks they should get the money. And you end up with, in theory, a structure that should be working together, but in fact, a structure that everybody just continues to do the same thing. And every single governor that I've said that to, Ben, you know what they've said? That's great, Jeff. I want you to head up this council. I said, I just told you that's a strategy for failure if you don't lean in. We need to, the people who make the decisions, we need to somehow get them engaged and get them involved. They have to get excited about this, which is a different political thing, because then the question is, what do they have to gain by investing in this strategy? And to me, if you all built a real hunger for this in Louisville, if I'm the mayor or the if I everybody is really saying it. And let me tell you, the only other force have a totally different relationship with government, because they fund all of the campaigns. I learned this from George Soros, the big financier, big liberal Democrat here in New York, and I chaired George's board. So Governor Pataki is a Republican, was running this state, and I have been lobbying Pataki for 6 years. Bunch of advocates, we go up there and rally, we had the parents, all this stuff, we get nothing. George asked for a meeting with Pataki. Pataki comes to George's office. George is late in his own office with the governor. I was like, boy, it must be something to have money. George comes in with the governor, he says, I want 3 things. In a half an hour, the governor says, I'll give you thing 1, I'll give you thing 2, thing 3 is gonna be a problem. So I'm sitting there saying, for years, I've been asking, bringing crowds of people trying to influence government. One person in an hour gets all the stuff that I've wanted to get, that I've been working on for 2 years. That's the power of the business community. That's the power of money. And I like people power, but I don't confuse that with the economic power that people can bring when they have a strong suggestion. I strongly suggest we need to support this kind of effort. And then it becomes in your political interest to be a champion of that also, especially when it's accountability, right? Because the Republicans, when I go to talk to the Republicans and the Democrats, the Republicans love the fact we're holding ourselves accountable, we're gonna have real outcomes. If folks don't deliver, we don't expect you to fund stuff. They say, okay, we believe in that kind of stuff. And so this is not something I have found them to be opposed to. The question is, what's in it for them? And if they think there's a community groundswell around this kind of stuff, they care about it. If they also have a couple of calls coming in from the business community, that really helps them, I think, begin to want to lean in on this. So I know I'm over time. Sadiq, would I have time to take one more question?
You have to, please.
Great.
If you can stay for one more, that would be, go ahead. Dr. Bennett?
Oh, I just wanted to shout out, I was one of your employees at Truce in 2004. I was an internship, so I saw different moments when you were leveling up. And I remember when you would bring funders through the building. So definitely seeing the different points of when you had to make challenging decisions of, do I do this? Do I make this decision? And how it impacts the community. So I just, that has been a part of my lived experience, seeing that in action as a teaching artist up there.
Well, and as you, Truce was an arts program first, but academics were critical. but kids went there because it was some of the best performing arts and video arts in the city.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so that's why I don't want people to get twisted, even though I'm talking all the academic stuff. Laura Rao, who just happened to be just one of the great educators, was a partner in doing the artistic part of this work. And a lot of young people who weren't interested in other stuff, they were very creative and they wanted to be part of that project. And we got those kids all into college too. In fact, we had some of the best results academically for our kids at Truce, as in all our programs in the zone. So thank you for working and supporting us and being part of that success.
A great experience. So that was it. That's the piece I just wanted to add to the different points of.
Thank you so much. And you know, we have a bold plan in Louisville. We really do have a bold plan in Louisville, and we've submitted that on two fronts, the path forward on two fronts, one to government and then also one to our school system. And before you spoke, Mr. Canada, the superintendent did talk and is still here with us, and I'm sure has heard everything that you've said. This has been remarkable. And what we need to do is create that groundswell. That means we have to have you back.
Yes.
That means we're going to tap into Bridgespan to bring them in to consult with us, to help with that. And the next time I meet with you and your team, I'm going to ask you for a list of other consultants you think might be helpful for us in Louisville. So we need to scale this work. We need to make some commitments and figure out how to get it done. But I just want to thank you so very much for your commitment to our children, for your commitment. I mean, listen, for your passion, for your yelling, for all of it, and for your outcomes, for getting it done, and for doing what you said you were going to do, and for continuously doing that. We just want to say thank you. So plan to be with us.
Sadiqa, you know that I am coming to Louisville. I know you're all coming here, but I am coming to Louisville. This is an ongoing relationship that we're establishing right now. So this is the beginning, and I want everybody to know this is not just a one-off. You can, hey, Jeff talked, and that's the end of it. I plan to continue working with y'all over quite a period of time.
And that's wonderful. We're going to set it up so that you can talk to our foundations and a bunch of other folks too. Thank you for your Saturday. Take care, sir. Thank you. Woo!